Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. US Fed delivers biggest rate hike in almost 3 decades. What's the impact to Malaysia? And blood donations more crucial than ever as hospitals tackle a backlog of surgeries. That's coming up. The US Federal Reserve's move to raise its benchmark interest rates by 75 basis points will not affect Malaysia. Finance Minister Tengku Datuk Sri Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz said the move has been factored in and expected in the market. Zafrul said inflation in Malaysia was still within the 2.3 to 3.3% forecast and that the revised US forecast still hasn't indicated a recession, but a moderation in GDP growth. The Federal Reserve has intensified its drive to tame high inflation by delivering the largest hike in nearly 3 decades. Zafrul, however, said that Malaysia, being a small and open economy, was subjected to the growth of developed countries such as the US, Europe and China. The Fed's rate decisions have often been a yardstick for central banks to frame policy. However, given the lagging pace of economic recovery from COVID-19, how will Bank Negara move following the Fed's hawkish stance? Julia Goh, economist from UOB Malaysia, weighs in.
So we think that there is a possibility for more hikes in the third quarter. I think the reality is inflation pressures are rising everywhere, not just in Malaysia, right? This is a result of the Ukraine crisis that's affected prices of food and energy, the China lockdown measures that's affected supply chains, and higher demand due to economic reopening. So for Malaysia, our inflation print may look modest, but when we break it down, we do see food inflation rising to 5-year highs, Malaysia's core inflation rising to highest level in 4 years. And so the reality is that as the economy is recovering, price of inputs are going up. The price pressures are also rising due to the global events. And in the future, it could become more sticky or permanent. So at this point, Malaysians are partly shielded because we have subsidies, or else inflation pressures could be even higher. And so for Bank Negara, we think that given these developments, we think the risk is if you don't act fast enough, it could lead to more problems later on.
Julia says as the economy continues to recover, Bank Negara should follow through with at least 1 to 2 more rate hikes to keep a lid on inflation.
The rate adjustments is to move in line with the economic recovery. So I guess for Malaysians, as interest rates go up, they will see adjustments to their interest, their loan repayments. That is to be expected. And of course, I'm sure Bank Negara is also mindful that there are already pressures in terms of cost of living and so forth. And so I would think that that's why they would not want to make it too aggressive as well, the rate hikes, because it could put it would put a lot of burden on the consumers, right? So I guess it's just to find a middle approach that is measured and not too aggressive.
Meanwhile, KENANGA Investment Bank views that Bank Negara is likely to raise the overnight policy rate by at least 25 basis points by year end, following the Fed's aggressive move.
In its economic report today, KENANGA said the global financial market's reaction to the rate hike and its eventual impact on the economy would provide a stronger impetus for most central banks to follow suit. However, this does not imply that BNM would follow the Fed's monetary decision in lockstep manner, said KENANGA. The investment bank said BNM's policy stance is gradually tilting towards tightening in view of improving domestic demand following the reopening of international borders and relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions, leading to the build-up of a demand-driven inflationary trend.
Malaysia must strive to ensure that its economic growth and recovery are equitably shared by all Malaysians. Minister in the Prime Minister's Department in charge of economy, Datuk Seri Mustafa Mohamad, said households in Sabah and Sarawak, as well as in the northern and eastern regions of Peninsular Malaysia, were found to experience slower progress in regaining employment and income compared to those in other regions.
In 2020, the GDP per capita gap between the central region of the country, namely the Klang Valley, Negeri Sembilan and Melaka, as compared to Sabah and Sarawak, were 2.7% and 1.3% respectively. In the 12th Malaysia Plan, we have made it our aim to reduce the gap to 2.5% for Sabah. This is a modest goal, which I believe we can achieve. Even worse, the highest increases in poverty were recorded in these states that have been left behind, namely Sabah, Kelantan, Sarawak and Kedah. We have been trying our best to mitigate this. Indeed, the issue of poverty eradication remains high, if not one of the main priorities on the government's agenda.
He said this in a recorded speech at the launch of the Malaysia Economic Monitor June 2022 report by the World Bank. Mustafa added that the EPU and the Implementation Coordination Unit was spearheading an effort to eradicate hardcore poverty in Malaysian families. According to him, the program hinges on local solutions tailored to the strengths of particular communities. The first phase covers 80 localities and prioritizes the states which have the highest poverty rates.
Beginning today, commuters will be able to enjoy free rides across all public transportation services under Rapid KL in the Klang Valley for a month. The offer is in conjunction with the launch of the first phase of the Putrajaya MRT.
Speaking at the launch, Prime Minister Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob said the free rides will include MRT, LRT, BRT, monorail and Rapid KL bus. It will also include KTM trips around the Klang Valley. Operations for the first phase of the Putrajaya MRT, a 17.5-kilometre stretch from Kuala Damansara to Kampung Batu, begins today. Covering 12 stations, each trip is capable of ferrying 1,200 passengers, with trains arriving every 4 minutes during peak hours.
The Education Ministry will conduct a post-mortem to discover why nearly 25,000 SPM candidates did not sit for the 2021 examination. According to Education Minister Dr. Razzie Jadin, majority of them were private candidates.
During the SPM results announcement, it was revealed that 24,941 out of a total of 407,097 candidates opted out of the exams. When asked about this, Razzie explained some of them were facing personal and financial problems. He says his ministry is analysing data and checking the trends of previous years. The ministry will then decide on appropriate measures to take should there be a rising trend of SPM candidates dropping out. A total of 9,696 candidates scored straight A's in all subjects in the examination.
Staying on education, has there been clear communication over abolishing PT3 exams? What support will students and educators need as a consequence of this move? Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests what they'd like to see from MOE. 2 months into the transition to endemic phase of COVID-19, the National Blood Centre reports an encouraging increase in blood donation rates nationwide. Deputy Director Dr. Noor Nazahah Mahmud attributes this to the relaxation of SOPs. However, she stresses that it is crucial for blood donations to remain constant.
Cancellation rate or the postponement of surgical procedures in the clinical sites during the pandemic time is quite high, and we have quite a backlog, a number of surgical cases, around 60,000. And for us to try to meet the demand and try to fulfill the requirement for the surgical procedures itself, means that we have to try and make the attempt to meet that requirement of patients needing the blood for surgeries. So to achieve that target, basically we have put up some figures of how many donation rate that is required. And this is also to get adequate blood and safe supply at any time. Basically, we are aiming to get around 3 to 4% of donation rate in Malaysia, but somehow we only at 2%, which is quite satisfactory. But all this work towards getting, a better rate basically is something that is consistent and continuous, and it includes the campaigns and promotional activities.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
COVID-19 memperlihatkan kepada kita betapa pantasnya adaptasi teknologi di kalangan PKS kita. Niaga AWANI dan Unified Business akan menyelami perjalanan kebangkitan semula PKS kita melalui segmen Jiwa SME setiap Selasa dan Khamis untuk inspirasi anda.
Transformasikan perniagaan dengan Unified Business, rakan digital pilihan anda. Hubungi kami sekarang dan jimat sehingga 50%. Jom Unified Business.
Welcome back. The leaders of France, Germany and Italy arrived in Kiev today, visiting the Ukrainian capital for the first time since the beginning of Russia's invasion. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky welcomed the leaders at the presidential palace as they seek to show solidarity and affirm support for Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi took an overnight train to Kiev. The visit comes as EU leaders prepare to make a decision next week on Ukraine's request to become a candidate for EU membership and ahead of an important NATO summit end of June in Madrid. Macron is deeply involved in diplomatic efforts to push for a ceasefire in Ukraine that would allow future peace negotiations. Globally, there are more calls for Russian President Vladimir Putin to be put before the International Criminal Court on war crime charges for atrocities committed in Ukraine. However, human rights lawyer Jeffrey Robertson said that while a trial in absentia is unlikely to be carried out soon, a Nuremberg-like trial may have an impactful outcome.
It may not be capable of implementation anytime soon, but it would have the same advantage as the judgment at Nuremberg, which authoritatively proved the Holocaust and the case against its perpetrators. A similar judgment from independent and eminent jurists, finding of guilt for a crime against humanity committed by Russia and by its leader, would have that resonance and authority that the judgment of Nuremberg has had throughout the decades since.
After years of mounting criticism, Australia's new government has formally committed to a more ambitious greenhouse gas reduction target of 43% by the end of 2030. A part of Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's key election pledge, the new target superseded the more modest goal set by the previous government of 26 to 28%.
Well, today Australia turns the climate corner. For years, the Australian government told the world that it was all too hard, told Australians that it was too hard, told the world that Australia wasn't up to it and wasn't up for it. Well, the Albanese government today sends a very different message.
Legislation to enshrine the new target in law would be introduced to the new parliament, which will sit for the first time on July 26.
North Korea is facing another infectious disease outbreak amid its battle against COVID-19. An unidentified gastrointestinal disease was reported in a farming region, further straining the country's healthcare system.
State media KCNA did not report the number of cases or any further details about the disease. However, leader Kim Jong-un was said to have sent medicines for those affected in the western port city of Haeju, located in its key agricultural region in South Hwanghae province. The reported outbreak comes as the isolated country tackles its first wave of COVID-19. It declared a state of emergency last month as it struggled with a lack of vaccines and medical supplies. The country has been unresponsive to South Korea's offer to help provide COVID vaccines.
And that's all we have for you on AWANI tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching. Good night.